making a black sesame mousse cake. We'll be baking a black sesame chiffon cake, a black sesame and white chocolate ganache, mixing the ganache with whipped cream to create a mousse, combining the two in a cake ring, and sprinkling the black sesame powder on top. If you're joining me for the first time, I'll give you a quick overview of my style. I provide all ingredients in grams unless an item weighs less than 1 gram. The reason why is because baking requires precision and I want to make sure that you have the best outcome. So I'll also be providing really helpful tips along the way. All of my recipes come with a full list of equipment, so I take out the guesswork for you. And if a recipe has multiple parts, I break it up into bite-sized pieces as organized into the progress bar below. If you have watched previous episodes of Low Carb is a Myth and have enjoyed them, please press the subscribe button. It really helps me grow my channel. And with that, let's get started. In front of me, I have my salt, vanilla extract, baking powder, milk, food coloring, butter, black sesame, eggs, sugar, and flour. The first thing that I'm going to do is add my egg whites into the mixing bowl. I'm going to let this mix on a medium speed, and I want to get it to a frothy stage before I start adding in the sugar. And at this stage, we'll be only adding in half the amount of sugar that we have into this bowl. When it comes to whipping egg whites, you want to make sure that you aren't over whipping it. What's basically happening when you're whipping it is that the cell walls of the egg whites are being stretched out. So when you over whip it, it will deflate. Egg whites are basically heavy water content. So this is the consistency that you're looking for, and you don't want it to be mixed any more than this. For this next stage, I have attached my paddle attachment to my mixer, and I'm going to add in my butter. Don't worry about cleaning out the stand mixing bowl. I'm going to lock my mixing bowl and let this mix on a medium speed, letting it cream for about 30 seconds. And you want to spread it along the bowl. And then we're going to start gradually adding in the rest of our sugar, slowly streaming it in. I'm going to lower my mixer onto a low speed and add in the sugar so it doesn't get everywhere. After butter has creamed, add in the vanilla extract and the food coloring. Once that is creamed, set this aside. We're going to start adding in our dry ingredients. So now for this next step, we'll be incorporating the dry with the wet ingredients. So we'll be first mixing the dry ingredients together. Add your salt, baking powder, and black sesame into the flour. Take your whisk and whisk this until it's fully incorporated. So I'm going to turn my mixer on to a medium speed. And I'm going to add in my dry ingredients and my milk incrementally. Now we're going to gently fold our egg whites into our butter mixture. So I'm going to take a small scoop of my egg whites and fold it in. And what I'm doing is I'm just cutting through the batter, scooping up, and creating a J shape. Every single time that I make a scoop, I'm just going to slowly turn the bowl for a more even mixture. Now that we have our black sesame cake batter, we'll be transferring it over to our cake pan. Whether you're using a non-stick pan or not, you always have to make sure that you are greasing and lining the bottom and the sides of the cake pan with parchment paper. So I'm going to use non-stick spray oil. So when you are measuring out your parchment paper, you want to make sure that it's not too much taller than the height of the pan, because if it is too tall, it will make it really difficult to see when it's baking in the oven. And you want to make sure you have a clear line of sight so you can tell whether it's done or not. So I am going to take my cookie scooper and I'm going to start adding this in. Whenever I'm watching cooking shows, I always notice that the hosts or the chefs never scrape the bottom of their mixing bowls, and there's always so much left. And I'm pretty sure that they do it to be polite, but we're friends, so I'm going to skip the pleasantries. All right, once that's in, I'm going to take an opposite spatula and I'm just going to run it back and forth and make sure that I have a really flat layer. In front of me, I have my white chocolate, my black sesame, gelatin soaking in ice water, cream, and milk. I have my stove on a medium heat and I'm going to start boiling my milk. You don't need to stir the entire way through, but you do need to stir occasionally. And when you are boiling milk, you just want to make sure that you aren't walking away, and you want to keep an eye on the milk because it can overboil if it's heated too fast. And I can see that it's starting to steam, so I'm going to add in my black sesame powder. And once you see it starting to simmer, it's going to start creating frothy bubbles and it's going to start rising. So when you see this, completely take it off of the heat. So for this next part, I have the black sesame milk that we just made, the white chocolate, and the gelatin sheets. And for equipment, I'll be using an immersion blender here. You can put your whisk on the side for now. So I'm going to add in the milk onto my white chocolate. You'll be able to tell when most of the white chocolate is melted because your spatula will be able to go around the bowl pretty easily. Alright, and I have my gelatin sheets over here. I'm going to take it with my hand and wring it out as well as possible. You want to refrain from putting any water inside this ganache. Once that's wrung, add the gelatin sheets into the ganache and let it dissolve. We'll let the gelatin sit for about 30 seconds before blending it with the immersion blender. So I have my stand mixer here with the whisk attachment on, and we'll be whisking the heavy cream to a medium stiff peak. You want to make sure that you take the cream straight from the fridge immediately before use because you need this to be ice cold. I'm going to lock this in place and I'm going to let this whip on a medium-high speed. Some visual cues that will tell you whether this is ready is that 1, the whisk will leave trails within the whipped cream, but when you pick it up, it won't hold a stiff peak and it'll fall right back into the mixture. All right, so we're going to start adding in our chocolate ganache into the whipped cream. And I'm going to slowly pour this in. You don't want to pour it all at once to deflate the heavy cream. I have my 8-inch cake ring, a piece of acetate, my wire rack with my cold cake on it, a knife, a leveler, and my mousse. I'm going to put my mousse aside first. Great. So I'm just going to take my cake off of the wire rack, and I'm just going to gently peel it off to prevent any breakage. So for this first step, I'm going to trim the outside of this cake. And the reason why you want to trim it is because when it bakes in a cake pan, the edges become really hard and we want to reveal the really soft layers inside. So I'm just going to press down very firmly, making sure that it reaches the bottom. And then I'm going to peel away the outer layer of the cake. And you can save these as a snack, or you can put it in a bag and crumble this up for cake pops. I'm going to take my leveler and I'm going to cut off the dome, revealing a really flat layer of cake. The flatter the layer, the more professional the cake looks. So to use the leveler, what I'm doing is I'm keeping the feet of the leveler on the table and I'm slowly cutting into the cake. And what I like to do is I like to make sure I cut off about 80% and restart at the end and follow the same process. The first thing that I'm going to do is take my piece of acetate, and because this came on a roll, you'll notice that it will naturally just shift into the middle, but I'm going to reverse it inside out and place it inside my cake ring, and then I'm going to add in my sponge cake into the middle. And when you are picking up your sponge, just make sure that you're doing it really, really gently. And just gently press it down. Once that's in, we're going to start scooping in our mousse. Once you have evened out your mousse to the best of your abilities, add the black sesame powder on top. I'm going to transfer the powder over into a sieve, and this is going to help me transfer it over very evenly and cleanly in a controlled manner. So I'm just lightly tapping on the edge of the sieve and creating a really nice coating of black sesame on top. So you'll notice that I transferred this cake over to a tray, making it easier to transport into the freezer. This will need to be frozen for at least 4 hours, or preferably overnight, before unmolding it from the acetate in the cake ring. I have my cake stand and my black sesame cake in front of me. I'm going to take the cake and slide it onto the cake stand really gently. I'm going to slip off my cake ring and peel off that acetate. When I was little, my nai would buy something called tangyuan every year for Chinese New Year. These are basically sweet glutinous rice balls that are filled with a sweet paste like red bean, peanut butter, or black sesame. Black sesame has always been my favorite flavor. It's an ingredient that has a way of transforming any dessert into something moody and glamorous. By making this black sesame mousse cake, it's a way of having something festive any time of the year, regardless of the holiday. And with that, let's get tasting. The black sesame gives this cake a super nutty flavor that is so satisfying, and the cake isn't too sweet, so it balances out with that white chocolate in the ganache so well. To be honest, mousse is something that I didn't think I would be a fan of, but in black sesame form, it's something that I really like. What are some of the traditions that your family brought you up with? Let me know in the comments below. Like I always say, whoever says that girls are complicated, obviously aren't keeping their girlfriends well fed. Until next time, bye guys.